Being born an only child, some luxuries were given to me while some burdens were left for me to bear. Figuring out how to entertain myself was one of said burdens, and over time I got quite good at it. I found that through the bad and the good, I could improve any said situation with the use of my imagination and escaping to other made-up worlds, something that I talked about in my One Piece and escapism video. Having helped with the construction of my adventurous mind, reading Rainbow first inspired me in how to really use stories to place myself away from any current situation I was in, appealing or not. I started my journey off Montresor with Jim Hawkins as a crewmate, my adventurous spirit feeling a gravitational pull. I got placed in a wizarding house at Hogwarts, witnessing the events of Harry's journey as a student instead of an audience member, growing along with them. I aided two small companions on their trek to Mordor, learning what friendship should truly be. I sang along with Baloo, learning how to be carefree. I manned the Black Pearl in escape of a naval armada. I became the Red Ranger, and I was Batman's Robin when my parents got a divorce, trying to help a broken entity with its pain as I navigated through my own. I turned to comic books with incredible superheroes and video games in which I could actually control the main protagonist. Or even better, a character of my own creation. I controlled Crash Bandicoot to defeat Dr. Cortex, and would eventually pilot a self-made guardian through the galaxy, fighting off denizens of the darkness. I would see my station in life, a middle school kid jumping back and forth between two houses. A kid who stopped caring about sports, about books, about movies, worrying only about how he could try to make things better, for himself and for his parents. Stress would overcome him, and he would turn to find one constant amongst the limbo of transferring houses: his Xbox. As funny as that may sound, video games were the last thing to pull him up and away from reality. Hours on end he would spend online with his friends, a preference to actually seeing them in real life due to some accumulated anxiety. He would choose not to do schoolwork, not focus in school, not go outside and get exercise anymore, because nothing but video games could take his mind off of the pains in his stomach. Of course, this didn't really solve anything, but it worked for the time being. A couple years pass. This middle schooler is now a sophomore, discovers acting, his new passion and form of escape, but one that he now knows can be productive. He'll sing and dance and act, working to make up for lost time. He still won't take care of himself, putting others before him, as is usual, and he's okay with that, now that he can indulge in acting. He carries on with this routine for 2 years, in and out of good and bad spots, until he stumbles across an anime of the name of Mob Psycho 100. Reading the premise of the show, a middle schooler with incredible psychic powers but no real talent elsewhere, I sit down and watch the first season of the show and hold on to each episode dearly as I see something beautiful being laid before my eyes. A story not about people dueling with psychic abilities, although it is quite prevalent and awesome, but instead about how we all have incredible potential, but that it takes work, self-awareness, and self-care to achieve. We are Dino Junkie, presenting beauty in storytelling, a look into self-actualization within Mob Psycho 100. This video will contain spoilers for mainly the first season, so be warned. If you have not already watched the show, I highly recommend you do so. There's a reason it's tied for my favorite anime of all time. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let's jump in, shall we? Mob Psycho 100 follows Shigeo Kageyama, or Mob, a quiet middle schooler with quite the bowl cut who holds remarkable psychic powers but heavily lacks value in most everything else in his life. Not athletic, not popular, and very socially awkward, Mob struggles with being a middle schooler who has no real guidelines on how one should be in middle school, something I think most of us can relate to. Mob spends most of his time at work, where he is an underpaid medium studying under the self-proclaimed master of spiritual arts, Reigen. Reigen is, of course, a con man, but an extremely likable con man who is able to convince the impressionable Mob. As Reigen takes Mob on jobs, we begin to see the extent of Mob's power, and just how much work Reigen has to do in order to seem unimpressed at the incredible abilities this true Esper holds. Mob's power is based off his own emotions, requiring him to constantly subdue them in order to maintain control, something that affects his social ability as it makes him quite non-receptive. As with those who don't hold psychic abilities, repressing your emotions isn't healthy and begins to have adverse effects, putting a strain on Mob. Each time he pushes something down, a percentage goes up. Reaching 100 means Mob has lost control, and he becomes incredibly dangerous. Even with this power, Mob does not try to use it to his advantage. He doesn't try to become a god, he doesn't try to become the most popular at his school, he only uses them at work or when he absolutely must in order to protect someone. He believes in using them on spirits, but not people, something that's put him in a line of conflict with many, but specifically, my favorite character of Mob Psycho 100, Teruki Hanazawa. Teruki is an Esper, like Mob, except for the fact that he chooses to use his powers to practically make him the kingpin of his school. He's not familiar or associated with any other Espers, so he sees his powers as a gift, something that proves to him he is more special than those around him, and I think this is a fantastic reflection of how many people view their own lives in the real world. Teruki thinks he is the protagonist of this world, that everything revolves around him, and that he is what is most important on a universal scale. Teruki uses his powers to physically trump other non-Esper high school students so that he may remain at the top. When Mob's school gets involved, Mob tells Teruki to stop using his powers to hurt people. Teruki is, of course, opposed to this and attempts to put Mob out of commission, only to realize Mob is an Esper as well, as he easily deflects the attacks. As Teruki continues his assault, Mob points out that he is trying so hard to do this because he is afraid of not being special, which sends Teruki into a rage. He knocks Mob unconscious, releasing an unknown entity or force within Mob that wipes the floor with Teru. After their fight, due to the overwhelming shock of defeat, Teru accepts that he is just an ordinary person like anyone else, and realizes his previous actions were wrong. Teru becomes a fantastic side character as he lives like Mob, only using his powers to stop those who were like him and wanted to abuse them. He supports Mob, helping him in psychic battles, and being a strong rival as well as a friend. This realization is how Teruki self-actualizes. He sees that he is not the main character and that all people have value, deciding that the way to become his best self is to use his charisma, intelligence, and powers for the greater good. His character arc is very well written and one of the many factors of what made Mob Psycho stand out to me. Reigen stepped into his own role as well. While not possessing any actual psychic powers, he has lived the life of a standard Japanese man and knows about how hard it can be. The irony that sets in here is that his title of being Mob's teacher doesn't actually apply to spirits at all, but how he can teach Mob to become a good person, for it is Reigen's philosophy of not using powers on humans that Mob latches onto so greatly. Reigen does take advantage of Mob at the beginning of their story, but as they have their falling out, the both of them realize that they need each other. Reigen comes to see that he has no social life or friends outside of Mob and misses the little bowl cut. He cares deeply for Mob and his well-being outside of work, and respectively Mob worries how Reigen will fare without him as he played along with Reigen's con. The two have a very good friendship and Reigen realizes his own mistakes, seeing that his value does not lie in being an actual psychic or even the best con man, but instead someone who can lead Mob on his path to becoming a good man. And while there are many other characters who realize their own true potential, like Mob's brother Ritsu, or even fun little Dimple, I'd like to mainly speak about Mob. Mob's unrelenting power is something to be feared indeed, but Mob doesn't want people to look at him that way. He wants people to love him, not fear him, and he wants their love because he earned it, not because he was born with something the rest of them don't have. Mob chooses to work for Reigen not because he actually thinks he will be obtaining a powerful master, since we've established that Mob knew he was fake. No, Mob chooses to work for him because of the valuable life advice that Reigen gives him, and the potential that he sees within Mob due to being used to the young boy's psychic nature. Reigen treats him normally, for the most part, and that is what Mob yearns for. That's the main contributing reason as to why he has an inferiority complex with his brother, because his brother is athletic, cool, popular, and smart. All the things Mob wishes he was. Mob simply wants to be a well-liked student who is successful and confident. He joins the body improvement club and pushes himself to continue working out, even though he has an extremely hard time doing so, all because he has a crush on a girl he has known since childhood and wishes to better himself for her, something that many don't push themselves into doing until later in life. Mob is someone who uses real-life experiences, not psychic battles, to learn and grow into the image he has for his future self. One has been able to combine an incredibly beautiful, touching story about the struggles of one journeying through manhood with an awesome psychic shonen filled with plenty of eye candy for the kids. I know for me, it's a lot easier to pay attention to the underlying messages and interwoven character relationships being developed when I'm seeing some of the most well-choreographed and animated fights in my life. Psychic boys fighting got me interested, but the struggling and persistent life of a middle schooler kept me hooked. So many times in my life, I've thought, this will get better because I'm important. I have to be. Things will turn out the way they should because otherwise something's wrong. So I saw myself in Teruki, coming to realize that's not the way the world works. You have to pull yourself up only to leap off the cliff, otherwise you'll be stuck in a never-ending limbo of self-induced pain and torture. So, yeah. That middle school kid grew up and saw a story about a boy not unlike himself. He saw how the boy worked to make his life better, and he wanted to do the same. No more escape, no more false travel. He would decide to make his life his own personal adventure, improving his health, going after what he wanted, gaining back confidence. This show helped him do that. So, I thank you, Mob, for pulling me out, because otherwise I might have just been stuck. Yo, if you made it all the way to the end, that's super cool. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and be looking forward to more content in the future. I hope you had a good ass day. My name is Max, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.